Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unravel one of the most intense, secretive, and high-stakes games of geopolitical chess in human history. Imagine a global web of espionage, sheer betrayals, and underground shockwaves that completely redrew the map of world power. We are diving deep into the declassified history of the ultimate weapon, the nuclear bomb, and the absolute unstoppable domino effect that spread it across the globe. Just think about the number 10. Out of the 195 countries on Earth right now, almost all of them possess some kind of advanced military tech to defend themselves, right? But out of all of them, only an elite 5%, literally just 10 nations, have successfully engineered the capability to trigger a nuclear apocalypse. It is an insanely exclusive club. And buying your way in, well, that required world-class espionage, deadly rivalries, and honestly, the betrayal of some of your closest allies. So, where did the terrifying catalyst for all of this actually begin? 1938. Nazi German scientists made a world-shattering discovery: nuclear fission. They realized that by splitting the atom, they could release massive, almost unthinkable quantities of energy through a chain reaction. When Albert Einstein, who was living in the US at the time, heard about this, he urgently warned the American president. He knew Hitler could use this to build a weapon capable of wiping out humanity. And that dire warning? It forced the United States to pour massive resources into a highly classified operation we now know as the Manhattan Project. They pulled in top scientists from the US, the UK, and Canada just to make absolutely sure Hitler didn't win this race. Now, you might think defeating Germany would be the end of the drama, but it was really just the beginning. See, during World War II, the Soviet Union was a crucial ally to the US. But in 1941, the US and the UK suddenly halted all public sharing of their nuclear research. Sensing they were being intentionally locked out by their wartime friends, the Soviet Union basically launched a shadow operation. They covertly deployed spies straight into the Manhattan Project to steal the data. But the Americans figured it out. They actually countered by turning those Soviet spies into double agents, feeding false and completely misleading blueprints right back to Russia. This deep underlying paranoia radically accelerated the global timeline. In 1945, the US successfully detonated the Trinity test, giving them a total global monopoly on the ultimate weapon. But because the Soviets didn't trust those stolen American designs, they pushed their own independent research incredibly hard. And to America's absolute shock, their monopoly shattered years ahead of schedule. The Soviets successfully tested their RDS-1 bomb in Kazakhstan in 1949. Meanwhile, the UK had originally shared all their early research with the US under a strict agreement. But once America got the bomb, they broke the agreement and totally cut the UK off. Feeling betrayed, the UK rushed to build their own, testing it in Australia in 1952. The Cold War was officially on. Desperate to maintain their dominance over the Soviets and the British, the US immediately triggered a secondary arms race. And the sheer scale of this escalation is terrifying. We're talking about moving from fission, which is splitting atoms, to fusion. This was the hydrogen bomb. It creates energy by fusing atoms together, kind of like the process that literally powers our sun. When the US tested this in 1952, the blast was a staggering 450 times more powerful than the weapon dropped on Hiroshima. Naturally, Russia followed suit in 1955 and the UK in 1957. As the technology inevitably began to leak and spread, each new world power stamped their secretive entry into the nuclear club with highly classified and sometimes ironically named project codes. From America's Trinity to Russia's RDS-1, to China's 596 and India's Smiling Buddha. Every single one of these names hides a really intense story of national desperation and defiance. Take France, for example. Originally, the French scientists who worked on the Manhattan Project only wanted to use nuclear power for peaceful electricity. But the 1956 Suez Canal crisis completely flipped the script. When Egypt took control of the canal, France, the UK, and Israel attacked. However, both the US and the USSR intervened to protect their own oil interests in the Arab world. Russia actually threatened France with atomic bombs, while America applied crippling economic pressure. Humiliated by both superpowers, France realized, hey, we need our own deterrent. So they quietly mined uranium from their African colonies and detonated their first test in the Sahara Desert in 1960. Over in Asia, a totally different kind of falling out was happening. During the Korean War in the 1950s, after Chinese troops pushed back American forces, the US threatened China with a nuclear strike. Chairman Mao quickly realized that without the bomb, the world would just keep bullying them. Now, initially, the Soviet Union helped China's nuclear program. But as their relations soured, the USSR suddenly pulled all its scientists out and completely abandoned China in June 1959. China took this as a massive insult. They mined their own uranium in the mountains, and when they successfully tested their bomb in 1964, they defiantly named 596, standing for the year 59 and the sixth month, June. It was a permanent slap in the face to Russia. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, another domino was wobbling. Israel was going down a highly secretive path. Collaborating really closely with France, Israel wanted an arsenal to deter threats from neighboring Arab nations. But U.S. President John F. Kennedy was strictly against this. He feared it would just push Arab nations to seek help from America's rival, Soviet Russia. Kennedy did everything in his power to stop them. However, after JFK's tragic assassination, that primary roadblock basically vanished. Just 4 years later, in 1967, Israel completed its program in absolute unacknowledged secrecy. To this very day, Israel maintains a strict policy of neither confirming nor denying their arsenal. But that absolute secrecy, it was blown wide open in 1986. A technician working at an Israeli nuclear facility named Mordecai Vanunu leaked secret documents and photos to the British press. And the fallout was straight out of a movie. Israeli intelligence, the Mossad, launched a covert honey trap operation, luring Vanunu across international borders, capturing him and smuggling him back to Israel. He ended up serving 18 years in strict imprisonment just for revealing the truth to the world. Jumping back to Asia, the dominoes just kept falling. India had been researching nuclear energy for electricity since before partition, but a crushing military defeat by China in the Himalayas in 1962, which was followed super quickly by China's own nuclear test in 1964, changed absolutely everything. For India, getting the bomb became a literal do-or-die situation. Under the guise of peaceful civilian electricity, they acquired reactors from the US and Canada. But behind closed doors, they were building a weapon. In 1974, a sudden explosion rocked the Rajasthan desert, ironically codenamed Smiling Buddha. India claimed it was a peaceful nuclear explosion, but a furious US and Canada definitely weren't buying it and immediately slapped strict sanctions on them. But as history shows us, sanctions rarely stop the spread. They just drive it deeper underground. Down in South Africa, the government's racist apartheid laws had triggered a massive global boycott. At the exact same time, they were terrified of the Soviet Union expanding its influence into neighboring Angola and Namibia. Feeling completely isolated, South Africa found a willing partner in Israel. In a highly secret alliance, Israel provided weapons technology and fighter jets, and in return, South Africa handed over raw uranium. This shadow partnership eventually culminated in the mysterious 1979 Vela incident, where American satellites detected a massive double flash over the ocean near South Africa. It's widely believed today to have been a joint nuclear test. Okay, let's hit pause for a second to look at a truly fascinating geopolitical mystery. After enduring total global isolation, pouring massive resources into a covert program, and finally achieving the ultimate deterrent, why did South Africa suddenly give it all up? They remain to this day the only nation in human history to completely and voluntarily dismantle their entire nuclear weapons program. The answer lies in the dramatic geopolitical shifts of the year 1990. The world completely realigned, the Soviet Union began to collapse, which entirely removed the threat of communist expansion in Africa. And at the exact same time, the apartheid regime was coming to an end. Without the defensive paranoia of a Soviet invasion and crippling global boycotts, the motivation that built the bombs in the first place simply evaporated. It's a pretty profound takeaway. South Africa proved that if the existential threat actually disappears, the weapon is no longer needed. Unfortunately, over in the Indian subcontinent, those existential threats were only escalating. In 1971, Pakistan suffered a devastating war with India, resulting in the loss of East Pakistan, which we now know as Bangladesh. So when India tested its bomb in 1974, the pressure in Pakistan reached an absolute boiling point. A Pakistani scientist working at a nuclear facility in Holland, Dr. A.Q. Khan, covertly stole highly classified uranium enrichment blueprints and smuggled them back to Pakistan. With extra support from China, who really wanted a strong ally against India, Pakistan pushed forward. Interestingly enough, the U.S. mostly turned a blind eye to this program because Pakistan was a crucial ally in fighting the Soviets in Afghanistan at the time. Pakistan officially tested its weapons in the Roscoe Hills in 1998, just weeks after India conducted a new series of tests. But the true global shockwave, that hit 6 years later, in 2004. Rumors had been swirling that Pakistan was sharing its technology. To absorb the intense international blame directed at the government, Dr. A.Q. Khan appeared on national television and shocked the world. He actually confessed to running a global nuclear black market.
taking full personal responsibility for illegally selling nuclear technology to Iran, Libya, and North Korea. He was put under house arrest for years after that.
Now, you've got to wonder, why would a scientist in Pakistan hand over the keys to the apocalypse to a country thousands of miles away like North Korea? Well, it all came down to the ultimate illicit geopolitical trade. See, Pakistan had the nuclear bomb, but they lacked the advanced long-range missiles needed to actually strike distant Indian cities. North Korea, on the other hand, had these excellent advanced Nodong missile designs, but they completely lacked the centrifuges to enrich uranium. So in the shadows of the global black market, they simply traded with each other. North Korea had actually been trying to get a bomb since the 1950s to deter the US and South Korea, but their allies, the USSR and China, repeatedly refused to give them the weapons tech. So North Korea just faked compliance. They signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1990 as a cover, all while secretly using the Pakistani blueprints to enrich uranium. In 2006, they conducted their first small-scale test. But the real wake-up call came in 2009. When their leader, Kim Jong-il, fell ill, the regime wanted to project absolute, undeniable power. They detonated a second blast so massive it literally triggered a magnitude 5 earthquake on the Richter scale. That officially made North Korea the 10th nation in the nuclear club.
So, as the dust settles on this explainer, we are left staring at an incredibly tense map. The domino effect that started with a simple letter from Albert Einstein has snaked its way through the Cold War, the Middle East, and Asia. But the terrifying question remains: who will be the 11th? Right now, Israel is applying massive pressure to stop Iran from developing a bomb, and Saudi Arabia's crown prince has openly stated that if Iran succeeds, Saudi Arabia is going to immediately follow suit. The technology is out there, the black markets still exist, and the fear driving it all is as potent as ever. So I leave you with this to think about. Is the nuclear chain reaction truly over, or are we just waiting for the next domino to fall?